They told her the price of freedom was one signature and a bus ticket. They didn't say the ticket was one way to a life where her name would be a password and her voice collateral. In the market, where the day roared like engines and coins, Alina sold cheap chargers and second-hand dreams. Her mother's medicines had run out 2 weeks ago. The landlord's patience ran out yesterday. When the woman in the yellow coat appeared, polite smile, clipboard, an accent polished by city radio, Alina saw a ladder thrown into a well. "Seasonal work," the woman said. "Legal, good pay, housekeeping, maybe a cafe. 2 months, cash in hand. We handle the transport." Alina took the brochure. The photos were sunlit and overexposed, girls with trays, boys with hard hats, laughter pinned to their faces like name tags. "You'll be safe," the woman promised, lowering her voice. "But we need discretion. Employers hate drama." At home, Mama's cough stitched the night into pieces. The pharmacy wanted cash. The landlord wanted more. Alina signed with a shaking pen, hoping that signatures could be spells. They gathered at a depot that smelled of diesel and last chances. Passports were collected for processing. Phones were boxed to prevent roaming fees. The yellow coat woman became brisk, managerial, allergic to questions. On the bus, a man checked the windows were screwed shut. "New policy," he said. Alina sat by a girl with a star tattooed behind her ear. "Nora," the girl whispered. "If they change your name, repeat the old one in your head. That way you can find your way back." The driver took roads Alina had never seen on any map. Night thickened, then morning came without a sunrise, just a pale smear on the horizon. At the border, their bus was waved through like a rumor. Somewhere after the third toll, the man who'd joked about windows stood and smiled without warmth. "Phones," he said, "will be kept for safety. You belong to Sera now. Rules are simple. Work, don't talk, don't run." Nora squeezed Alina's hand. "Remember your name," she breathed. Alina did, once, like a prayer. It wasn't a cafe. It was a townhouse with curtains like closed eyes and locks that clicked from the outside. Sarah, tall, immaculate, eyes the color of stainless steel, walked the hallway in soft slippers and hard rules. "You will serve," she said. "Clean, entertain clients, no freelancing, no crying in public, no police. Debt is the language of adults. You owe for transport, room, food, and the special visa that doesn't exist if you ask stupid questions." Their names were replaced with Petal, Dove, Lark. Alina became Ivy, which felt like a plant trained to climb whatever wall it was given. Nights spun, a carousel nobody asked to ride. Clients came with wedding bands and briefcases, with laughter like broken glass. Sarah collected tips and tears with equal efficiency. Every attempt at protest met the ledger. "See? -300 for attitude, -500 for door damage when you tried to leave. Your debt grows." Alina learned the choreography of survival. Speak when spoken to, vanish into corners, hide the edges of herself. But at 3 a.m., when the house settled and the city hummed beyond reach, she repeated her name silently, threading herself back together. Silence had a currency. It purchased shorter punishments, longer showers, extra bread. Sarah rewarded silence with quiet nods and punishments calibrated to avoid bruises a client might notice. "We run on discretion," she said. "No police. Police love paperwork more than girls." But silence collected interest. The more Alina swallowed, the harder it became to speak, even inside her skull. Nora started keeping a calendar of pretend tomorrows. On the back of a receipt, she sketched a ferry and wrote, 3 more paydays. They both knew wages were a ghost story Sarah told to keep the lights on. One night, a client forgot his tie clip in the upstairs room, and Alina found it. Not the clip, but a folded business card in his jacket, the crest of a local non-profit that printed posters. If you see something, say something. There was a hotline number, small, like a secret you might miss if you blinked. Alina palmed the card and felt the paper burn through her skin. Alina bartered cautiously with fate. She scrubbed floors with extra care, smiled with her lips, not her eyes, pocketed bar soap to carve into nothing, just to feel she could shape something. She tested doors, measured footsteps, timed Sarah's cigarette breaks. The hotline card lived in the seam of her pillow, ink smudged by sweat. Each night she planned a phone call that didn't exist. Each morning Sarah counted heads. When a new girl arrived, 16 maybe, with a bruise like spilled ink on her temple, Sarah said, "She's Daisy, trainer." The girl's real name was Lika. She spoke in a mountain dialect that made her sound like a song. On her second night, Lika asked, "Do we die here?" Alina answered the only way she could. "Not if we learn to be louder than our debt." Lika nodded solemnly, as if this were a math problem she could solve. It happened because of a broken faucet. Water spit and rattled, flooding the downstairs bathroom. Sarah swore, summoned a handyman, and drove off to source parts, dragging 2 enforcers with her. For 27 minutes the house was chaos and wet tile. Nora cracked the box where phones slept like hostages. Alina's fingers shook as she dialed the hotline from the client's card, then stopped. What if the number rang inside Sarah's pocket? What if help was just another shape of trap? Lika pressed her palm over Alina's. "If you call for me," Lika whispered, "then I promise to answer for you one day." The line connected. A woman's voice, steady and ordinary, said, "You're safe to talk."
"Are you in danger now?" Alina said the name of the street, the color of the curtains, the number of girls, the way the back gates stuck in the heat. She said, "Sarah." She said, "Ledger." She said, "Help." "Stay on the line," the woman said. "Open a window and place a towel on the sill." Alina looked at the painted shut window. She used a butter knife to pry the lock. It gave with a quiet, miraculous cough. Sirens are loud in movies and quiet in real life, a low animal sound you feel before you hear. The first car muffled its lights. Officers slid through the gate like shadows with badges. The non-profit advocate arrived too, wearing a vest and the same steady voice from the phone. "Hands visible. Nobody moves," an officer whispered. Nora cried without sound. Lika stood like a reed in still water. Alina pressed her towel to the sill, and the room became a coordinate on a map that mattered. Sarah returned mid-operation, saw the cars, and tried reverse. The gate stuck exactly where Alina had said it would. There was a short chase, the crisp clatter of handcuffs, an officer reading rights like a scripture. Inside, the girls were counted again, this time into blankets. Names were given back one by one like coats retrieved from a check room after winter. A paramedic shone light into pupils, wrote vitals. The advocate said, "You are not a crime. Someone committed one against you. Rescue is a door, not a room." On the other side were interviews, paperwork, a shelter, with fluorescent mornings, nightmares you couldn't put back into your head once they leaked into the day. The ledger followed like a ghost, debt of shame, of imagined failure, of not having run sooner. Alina learned the language of counseling: triggers, grounding, body keeps the score. She learned to eat without counting, to sleep without bargaining. She and Nora took turns believing in tomorrow.
Lika enrolled in a class and kept her promise, showing up for Alina on the bad days with soup and silly memes and quiet presents. There were court dates. Sarah arrived polished, expensive, with a lawyer who spoke in acids. Consenting adults, misunderstanding, opportunity. The prosecutor held up ledgers, photos, the towel on the windowsill, sealed in a clear bag like proof of a miracle. The judge listened. The system creaked. Justice took the stairs. Alina got her phone back and a job at a real cafe where tips were in jars, not binds. She counted the sugar packets like votes for a future. On breaks, she volunteered with the non-profit, answering the hotline that had once saved her. "You're safe to talk?" she would say, borrowing the exact cadence, because salvation sometimes lives in a tone. One call came from a bus, another from a bathroom stall, a third from a girl who didn't know the name of her street but knew the color of her curtains. Alina taught them towels and window latches, whispered how to memorize their own names when the world tried to rename them. Silence still had a currency, but now Alina spent it wisely, on listening, on keeping confidences until girls could hold their own stories without shaking. They sold her for silence, but silence didn't stay bought. It broke into speech, then into sirens, then into laws rewritten in rooms she will never see. The moral is simple and stubborn. When a voice is treated like contraband, smuggle it out. Name the rooms, name the routes. Name the gate that sticks in the heat. And if you, reading this, recognize a window painted shut in your life or someone else's, pried open, towels on the sill, speak. Help can find an address only after someone gives it a name.